Have you heard any politicians make those major themes? Not one. Even my dear brother Barack, when you gonna say something about poor people and working people? Keep talking about the middle class. Middle class ain't nothing but working people with a bourgeois identity. Let them lose their jobs. Let them become unemployed and underemployed. And you see how middle class they are. But no, the country's moved so far to the right after Reagan. And then when our dear brother Bill Clinton signed the welfare bill that left folk dangling. And then the mandatory sentencing of the crime bill. And Bill Clinton is the favorite of black people now. He plays his saxophone, you know. More Kennedy than Coltrane, but that's all right. But he was leaning toward the right too, triangulating Republican policies to win elections. And what happens? You get the pilage of wreckage upon wreckage. One generation after another, and another, and another. Uneducated, unemployed, relatively unloved, uncared for. There was a time when our churches would have stepped in. Yes. Oh yeah. Right here in Detroit, Reverend Sampson and said, oh, you see all of these poor folk going to prison? We need to focus on prison ministry. Cut back on the building fund. We see all these folk catching hell. We need to examine not just the old folk as precious as they are. Yes, we need building for senior citizens. We need massive mentoring programs the way Alpha and the way Susan Taylor and others are. No, you can end up with a mega church. I have nothing against mega churches. But if you have a mega church that doesn't have mega love and mega courage, something is wrong. Something is deeply wrong. You set up a high standard. Because that's what it means to render service. Connecting Socratic energy, thinking for ourselves against the grain. Reading Du Bois. Du Bois, what's on your mind? I see an American empire in decline because it has not listened to those voices that focus on poor and working people, so that the ability of America to democratically revitalize itself becomes weaker and weaker, and the voices that are xenophobic and more hateful and more narrow move more and more to the center and think they ought to be center stage in American history. That's Du Bois' last 2 years of his life before he died at 63. All we need is voice. James Baldwin. James Baldwin, what you think? I think America will be unique among modern nations to move from perceived innocence to corruption without a mediating stage of maturity. America's grown wealthy, grown old. When will America grow up? Maturity. And a sign of maturity, we old folk know this, is first, you have to recognize that time is real. Just look at yourself in the mirror. Push aside all the plastic surgery and both sides. Time is real. And time is real means choices have consequences. The choices have consequences mean chickens come home to roost. You're going to reap what you sow. It's in the rinse. It's already in the wash. Just manifest. And that's what America's dealing with right now. Chickens coming home to roost. And more and more it's up to our young people. We put a disproportionate amount of burden on our young people. But they have to be up to the task. To read, think critically, have great compassion, to connect that courage, to think with courage, to love, to listen to the music that is enriching and profound, and shaping and molding of one's heart, mind, and soul and body, that don't allow those great freedom fighters of the past to become just icons in a museum rather than part of a vital tradition that young people feel as part and parcel of their lives. And it may be the case. It may be the case because I'm a blues man in the life of mine, which means that I have a tragic comic sensibility. I know that empires come and go. It could simply be the case that America's running out of gas as an empire. And the legacy of Martin King and others itself will become one of the high moments right as America began to erode, decay, slide down a slippery slope, and China and India and Brazil and others began to step to the center of the historical stage. There's a real possibility of that. America's not going to last forever in terms of its ability to be at the center of things. And if it doesn't become more radically democratic, which means empowering poor and working people, it's going to move toward the right and be crypto-fascist anyway, which means I wouldn't be able to give these kind of speeches anymore. Oh, I come to Detroit, I just be waving to y'all as they drag me to the prison. In the name of Jesus, I said. We laugh, but that's not funny. Not at all. I worked with the Black Panther Party in the 60s. Yeah. Never forget Fred Hampton. Never forget Bobby Hutton. Just wrote the introduction to Bobby Seale to see the time will be out in a few months. Those young brothers and sisters were on the move. And they were not terrorists at all. They were trying to police the police. And they wanted arbitrary police and they wanted fair police. They wanted to make sure that the prisons were not disproportionately poor. Want to make sure that everybody had equality before the law. And someone was shot down like dogs. See, Brother Barack said he feels like he's being treated like a dog. And he's right in terms of certain right-wing brothers and sisters. But let me tell you, in the 1960s, there was a whole wave of freedom fighters like Stokely Carmichael, who were hunted down like dogs because of the deep love they had for poor people. And you can disagree with them politically or ideologically. That's not the point. As a Christian, I love Muslim Malcolm X, not because we worship in the same way, but because he had love in his heart for poor people and the wretched of the earth, and he was willing to speak his truth and allow that suffering to speak as he's willing to live and die. That's what we're talking about. And that's what we're moving out there on this. There's Philip Barrigan, our white Catholic brother. There's Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, our Jewish brother. There's Cesar Chavez, our brown brother. We know black folk have no monopoly on this because there's a rich history of black gangsterism, black corruption, and black cowardice. You don't have to be reminded of that, especially during Black History Month. Every group, every people have the best and the worst. They have virtues and vices. They have insights and blindnesses. But if we cannot generate by means of example, critical engagement, bearing witness to love, acknowledging justice is what love looks like in public. So don't disconnect talking about love and talking about justice. And then, let me end this, we're going to have a good time in dialogue. Trying to exemplify hope. Because despair is a vice, and yet it's real.